I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Time to review some Parquet Courts.
Yes.
Parquet Courts. This is an indie rock band from New York City. And this is their third record, Sunbathing Animal. And man, the indie charts are going crazy for some Sunbathing Animal. And so Tom and I naturally listen to this and go, well, you know, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then you guys requested it, meaning we had to review it. So here we are today, a little bit later than our normal reviews. We've been kind of busy lately.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to review Sunbathing Animal for you. Tom, how would you describe Sunbathing Animal's sound? Now, I'm going to go ahead and just do this for you.
Okay.
Okay, because to me, two bands come to mind when I hear this sound.
Okay.
The Fall
Yes.
and Pavement.
Absolutely.
That's what I hear.
And it's funny because The Fall is one of Pavement's biggest influences.
Right.
So they're
But
just
they do
going
have
all the
very
way
different-
back to
yeah,
the,
they do have very
absolutely.
different sounds.
Oh, very much so. And this does get back to the more roots of that, where everything's kind of stumbling. The guitars aren't in tune, the vocals aren't in tune,
Oh,
nothing's in tune.
No.
You know,
if you like music that's in tune, this is not for you.
No, do not listen to it if that's what you're into. But I absolutely, I mean, those two bands I think really do kind of sum it up. You know, you have the vocalist who's doing almost more of a spoken word type thing.
For the most
you know,
part. When he tries to sing, it's a god awful. But
Yeah.
that's the point.
it kind of sounds like he's constantly trying to sing. Like maybe he gets some courage and then he tries to hit a note and he's like, "No, I'm just gonna back off, man. I'll just talk a little bit more." You know.
I'm really sorry about that.
Yeah, I went for it. It didn't work. I'm just gonna move on.
And what's funny is, like, oftentimes in, like, the chorus is, like, if you listen to track 10, Instant Disassembly, which is, I think is, like, a fan favorite of this album. You know, like, that, like, when he sings and there's a chorus, there's usually, like, multiple layers of vocals there,
harmonies.
and they purposely made them just clash, like, it's just this gigantic... like ball of just vocal spaghetti that's just covered in poop. Like, that's what it sounds like. And really it's meant to sound like that. It's meant to have that grating, that almost like aggravation to the sound.
It's not meant to be a pretty boy chorus or something like that.
Right.
You know, the guitar, even in the same track you were just talking about, it's clangy.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's deliberately a little off kilter, and it's all part of the feel that they're going to. But to me, a lot of that comes down to the presentation, and that's not to say that presentation isn't important.
Certainly.
I mean, it's huge here. You could present these songs in a number of different ways. This is just the way they're choosing to represent themselves. But then, you know, you got to look at the songwriting, which is the other part of it, and which, for this album, I feel like overall the songwriting is good.
Yeah.
It really varies a bit track by track.
Yeah,
you know,
you got some more rockin' tracks in there. You got some slower tracks that are a little bit more just repetitive and pronounced, much more in the post-rock or post-punk vein.
Definitely. I'd like to point out, like, track 3, Dear Ramona.
Yeah,
I really liked that track. It had a bit more sentimentality to it, a bit more movement and contrast in how the sections of the song went. The chorus more kind of came down, and I thought that was a neat shift. As kind of a contrasting point to that, the song we were just talking about, Instant Disassembly, which is essentially a little over 7 minutes of just kind of the same stumbling guitar lines, vocal lines over and over again. The dynamics never really change. It's just, I mean, the most dynamic shift you get is when the extra vocal layers come in. And then, you know, they're just really adding more things into the mix rather than changing the way anything's being performed. So, you know, I don't know how far that gets you. And you know, you mentioned that one is kind of a fan favorite, and that's understandable. Coming from this style and what I would expect a lot of fans of this style would be looking for. You know, there's a lot of that just kind of genuine, kind of cute indie rock sound in there. It's very typical, but you know, to me, it was a bit hit or miss. And I think that track in particular is because it carries so much weight on the album being a longer track, I never felt like it was entirely justified. But taking that and applying it to the larger scope of the album, that's really kind of how I felt about the whole thing, I gotta say.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think that Sunbathing Animal kind of comes down to that natural argument we always seem to find with a lot of popular albums that, or at least in the past few years, that tend to value, you know, the general sound of the album and put a huge weight on the sound of the album or over the album composition or songwriting elements. And like you said, a lot of the songwriting elements here are good. Where I actually take beef with Sunbathing Animal is in more of the album structure here. This is a longer album. It's upwards of 50 minutes, not quite 50 minutes, but it's upper 40s, and 13 tracks on this record. Now, what I would say is that, you know, that's really not out of the ordinary for album length, but this album feels long. And
I
think the reason why it feels long is because there's a number of those tracks that independently are actually kind of impressive and fun to listen to and make that thesis statement of what this album is all about. But when you put them together, that kind of lethargic, kind of just stumbling feeling we were talking about, that stumbling sound, it kind of wears on the listen after a while. And especially on the back half of this record, I just didn't feel like there was a lot of energy or really direction in where the sound was going. And as the album progressed, each subsequent track, I just cared less and less and less and less. And it got to the point where it was just waning on me. Like, I just did not want to listen to this further after a while.
I absolutely agree. And looking at just the big picture of this album, once again, you know, a lot of things that I know people are loving about it are the exact gripes that I have. I don't find it to be particularly original. I don't find the songwriting to be of a very high quality consistently. You know, it's not bad, but exactly what you said, Jake. It's more just that they don't really move from home base much. You know, there's not a lot of variety. There's not a lot of real energy. Every now and then, I mean, like the title track is a good kind of punk rocker. That was pretty cool. Yeah. But even from there, just I don't get into the whole endearing, off-key, cutesy indie rock aspect of it, and you really have to.
And if that's what they were going for, I would argue that they could have established more of a warrant with the listener as well. They could have done more in the vocals, more in the lyrics to bring you in.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another criticism of Sunbathing Animal, which is this is just a bit safe. There's really never a point here where I feel like these guys are reaching for something that hasn't been done before, and I know that that's kind of a elitist criticism, and I'll call myself out on that. But you know, in this day and age, in 2014, so much music has been amassed, even in the past 15 years since, you know, computer laptop technology, and you know, you can make music on a laptop, you know, but so much music has been written over the past, you know, half a century that it really takes true ingenuity to come up with something truly original, and that's the thing I value most in music, and I just don't feel these guys pushing the envelope enough to impress me at like a core level. Now, I can appreciate a lot of the things that they're doing, but I think that these guys have the talent, and especially the songwriting chops, to take it up a notch, and that's what I would expect to see from them in the future if they're going to make a record that truly deserves the hype that they're getting here.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you know, not to be a naysayer. Well, okay, to be a naysayer.
We're pretending to be music critics. We're naysayers. Let's do some damn naysaying.
Okay, I will do some naysaying.
Naysay it up, Tom.
I do not think that today, in 2014, there is any excuse to... Thank you for your visual support there. I do not think there's any excuse for a vocalist to sound like this. I just don't. And that's not to say that I only listen to American Idol winners. You know, that's not the case. Not every voice has to be pretty. Not every voice has to be perfectly on pitch. But it's not just that this guy doesn't have a pretty chorus boy voice. It's just that I think it sounds lazy. It comes off as lazy. I feel like if they just tried a little bit harder with the performance aspect of that, I at least would buy into it a bit more. At the same time, I know that's what people are loving about this. It's one of the more endearing, so to say, qualities that I know keep a lot of indie rock fans coming back to stuff like this. But for me, it's a bit too out there in that regard.
And that, I gotta say, did not bother me nearly as much.
Okay.
Which is probably why I think I'm like, from an objective standpoint, a little bit higher than you on this. There's no doubt in my mind I'm probably not going to come back to Sunbathing Animal, and it sounds like we're way lower than the majority of you guys out there on this. And you know that's going to happen from time to time. Tom, what are you going to give this?
I'm going to give this a 66.
I'm going to give it a 71.
Right.
That puts us at a 69, which is below our usual grade or middle of the road grade. So we probably wouldn't recommend this to you unless you're a big fan of the indie rock persuasion, especially the bands that we mentioned, Pavement, The Fall, anything in that post-punk or like 90s indie rock / grunge scene. This might be something that you would listen to then and get a lot out of. But if that's not your thing, I would avoid this one, even though it's getting a lot of hype. Now, that being said, Tom and I are just two guys listening to music, and if you guys are loving this, Rock on, man. You keep listening to Parquet Courts and loving it, and tell us why at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Now, as always, follow Tom and I on Twitter and Facebook, or like, or whatever it is nowadays, whatever the kids are doing nowadays. I mean, we should probably get a Pinterest page. I mean, let's just be real. Instagram that shit. I don't even know what that means.
Nope.
I'm married and I have a kid. Like, I don't know what that means. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.